June 1940. Europe was burning. Adolf Hitler had just crushed France in a matter of weeks. His armies had rolled across the continent with terrifying speed. Tanks, aircraft, and soldiers moved like a machine no one could stop. Now only one enemy remained in Western Europe: Britain. Across the English Channel, British soldiers were evacuating from Dunkirk. They had escaped, barely, but they had left behind almost all their heavy equipment. To many German generals, Britain looked weak, exhausted, vulnerable, and Hitler saw an opportunity. Operation Sea Lion. Inside German headquarters, planners began preparing for something that had never been attempted in modern warfare: a full-scale invasion across the sea. The plan was called Operation Sea Lion. Barges were gathered from across occupied Europe. Riverboats, fishing vessels, anything that could carry men or supplies. German engineers even practiced loading horses and tanks onto floating platforms never meant for war. But there was a problem. Germany had one of the strongest armies in the world. It did not have the strongest navy, and everyone knew it. Still, Hitler believed Britain would collapse before a landing was even necessary. He expected fear, panic, and political pressure to force the British government to negotiate. But he underestimated one man. Churchill refuses to yield. In London, while bombs began to fall, Prime Minister Winston Churchill stood before Parliament and delivered words that would echo through history. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." Those words weren't just a speech. They were a signal to Germany, to Britain, and to the world. Britain was not preparing to surrender. Britain was preparing to fight alone. And that changed everything. The real obstacle. Hitler's generals soon gave him a brutal truth. Before Germany could land troops in Britain, they needed control of the skies. That meant destroying the Royal Air Force. Without air superiority, invasion barges would be easy targets. British warships could tear them apart. A single failed landing could turn into a disaster that would weaken Germany's power across all of Europe. So the invasion timetable was quietly delayed. First, they said, Britain's Air Force must fall, and that decision would trigger one of the most important air battles in history. Summer 1940. The invasion of Britain was no longer just a plan on paper. Barges were waiting. Troops were ready. Supplies were stockpiled along the French coast. But one thing stood in the way: the sky. To invade Britain, Germany first had to destroy the Royal Air Force. Without air superiority, German invasion forces would be helpless. British ships would attack the slow-moving barges. British planes would strike from above. The English Channel could turn into a graveyard. So Hitler gave the order: crush Britain from the air, and the Battle of Britain began, wave after wave. German bombers crossed the Channel in massive formations, escorted by fighters. Their mission was clear: destroy airfields, destroy radar stations, destroy British aircraft on the ground. Day after day, sirens screamed across southern England. But something shocked the German high command. British fighters kept coming. No matter how many airfields were hit, no matter how many planes were destroyed, the RAAF was still there, rising to meet every attack. German pilots began reporting something troubling. They are not finished. They keep coming back. The secret weapon Germany underestimated. The RAAF wasn't just fighting with courage. It was fighting with technology and coordination. Along Britain's coast stood a chain of radar stations, an early warning system that could detect incoming aircraft long before they were visible. This allowed British commanders to send fighters exactly where they were needed, instead of wasting fuel searching the sky. German leaders didn't fully understand how powerful this system was. They thought Britain was nearly beaten. They were wrong as the turning point mistake. Frustrated by the RAF's survival, Hitler made a decision that would change the course of the battle. Instead of focusing on airfields and radar, German bombers were ordered to attack cities. London became the main target. The goal was to break British morale, to make civilians panic and pressure their government to surrender. But the plan backfired. By shifting focus away from RAF bases, Germany gave Britain something priceless: time to repair airfields, time to build more aircraft, time to regroup, and the RAF used that time well. Germany realizes the risk. By early autumn, German losses were rising. Experienced pilots were being shot down over enemy territory, and they weren't coming back. Meanwhile, British pilots who bailed out often returned to fight again. German commanders began to warn Hitler. An invasion without control of the skies could end in disaster, and for the first time, Hitler hesitated. Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain, was quietly postponed, not cancelled, but no longer certain. Autumn 1940. The barges were still there. Thousands of German troops remained stationed along the French coast, waiting for the order that could change the war forever. Maps were ready. Landing zones were marked. Timetables were prepared down to the hour. But reality was closing in. The weather turns against Germany. The English Channel is not a calm sea. As autumn approached, storms became more frequent. Strong winds and rough waves would have scattered the slow, lightly protected invasion barges. Many of the vessels gathered for Operation Sea Lion were not built for open-water combat conditions. German naval officers warned. A bad storm on invasion day could turn the operation into chaos before British forces even arrived. And there was no guarantee of clear skies either, which meant the Luftwaffe could not promise full air cover. The invasion plan depended on perfect timing. Nature refused to cooperate. The Royal Navy. The giant, waiting in the dark. Even if German troops reached the beaches, another threat loomed. The Royal Navy. It was still the most powerful navy in Europe. British warships were stationed across the region, ready to move the moment an invasion fleet was detected. German planners knew the truth. Slow barges packed with soldiers would be easy targets for fast destroyers and cruisers, and, unlike aircraft, ships could keep fighting through bad weather if the Royal Navy reached the Channel during the invasion. The result could be catastrophic. Germany faces the hard truth. Reports piled up on Hitler's desk. The RAF was still operational. Weather conditions were worsening. The Royal Navy remained a massive threat. German naval strength was not enough to guarantee protection. For the first time since the war began, the risk outweighed the reward. An invasion failure would not just cost lives, it could weaken Germany so badly that future campaigns would suffer. So the order was quietly changed. Operation Sea Lion was postponed indefinitely. Troops were reassigned. Equipment was redirected. Attention began turning east, toward the Soviet Union. Britain had not been defeated. It had survived. And that survival would shape the rest of World War II. End of story. Germany had the army. Germany had the plan. Germany had the moment. But Britain had the sky, the sea, the weather, and the will to endure. And that was enough.